chains recovered from the residence. Yeah, rings.
Detective, that's all the jewelry that was seized right there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you look through that and tell me if there is a Richard Mill or Mille, M-I-L-L-E?
Young Thug walked into one of Atlanta's most famous jewelry spots and casually picked out over $200,000 worth of chains, watches, and bracelets like it was nothing. Then he stepped right out the door without paying on the spot, and nobody in the store tried to stop him at all. Instead, they were smiling, snapping pictures, and hyping him up while he rocked the pieces like a superstar.
It looked less like a sale and more like a full-on moment designed to be seen. They even let everything hit social media, turning it into a whole online show. Posts went up, energy was high, and it felt like they were fully backing him. Everything looked smooth, respectful, and positive, like there was a clear understanding behind the scenes. But then, out of nowhere, the vibe flipped completely. The same store came back with a $365,000 lawsuit trying to paint him as dishonest in front of everybody watching. But here's where it gets messy. Young Thug didn't just stay quiet and take it, he pushed back hard. And when he did, he started pointing at something way bigger than just one artist and one jewelry store. He brought attention to a pattern that's been going on for years, where artists' names, faces, and influence get used as promotion tools. Then, when the timing feels right, everything switches up into legal action, and suddenly the story looks totally different. Stay locked in, because this situation starts revealing how Icebox really operates behind closed doors. And make no mistake, this isn't just about unpaid money or some basic misunderstanding. It runs deeper than that, showing how the jewelry game can catch artists slipping if they don't fully understand how things move. Situations like this don't just happen. They turn into hard lessons almost overnight. Back when this first came out in 2018, people were quick to say Young Thug was just reckless with money, acting without thinking and going too far. That was the simple story, and everyone ran with it fast. And honestly, that narrative worked perfectly in the store's favor. But hold on, because before jumping to that conclusion, there's more going on than people first realized. There's a lot more happening behind the scenes than people realize. The truth is, Icebox built a big part of its business on getting artists to move exactly like this. Grab the jewelry now, handle the payment later. This wasn't random or accidental at all. They knew exactly who they were dealing with when they offered that kind of setup to one of the hottest names in Atlanta. This wasn't confusion. This was strategy from the jump. So now the real question hits different. Whose plan actually worked better in the end? Because this is where everything starts heating up fast. For anyone not familiar with Atlanta's jewelry scene, Icebox is not some quiet corner store. This is a major name with serious presence. Sitting right on Peachtree Road in Buckhead, one of the most high-end areas in the city, they've built a reputation around serving rappers, athletes, and celebrities at the top level. They know exactly how to operate in that world. This isn't no basic mall jewelry stand situation. They understand their audience, and more importantly, they know how to turn attention into real money. Every move is calculated, every interaction has value, and visibility is everything in this space. And here's where it gets even more interesting. In this industry, there's a long-running method where jewelers grow their name through artists using delayed payment setups. It's part of the culture for years, and it plays a bigger role than most people think. The artist takes the jewelry, wears it outside, posts it everywhere, and instantly that brand is in front of millions. Every time a rapper with a huge following shows off a chain connected to Icebox, that's massive promotion without spending on ads. That kind of exposure alone can be worth serious money. On the surface, it looks like a win for everyone. The artist gets the image, the jeweler gets the spotlight, and the payment is expected to come later. But behind that setup, things aren't always as smooth as they seem.
So the chains recovered from the residence. Watch, yeah, rings.
Detective, that's all the jewelry that was seized right there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you look through that and tell me if there is a Richard Mill or Mille, M-I-L-L-E?
Wait, hold on. Is there a missing Richard Millie? Them bitches are like $500,000.
055 Bubba Watson white ceramic watch. Pretty distinctive as it's white ceramic, so that might help your search.
Okay, I mean, I see a Richie Miller, but only a pink one. I don't see a white one.
The pink one Drake gifted to Thug, so there's a missing white one?
To confirm that there is no white one in there, just so you're certain.
Might need more space than that.
Yeah, there's not a white.
That's the clean, polished version of the story. but it goes way deeper than just a simple pay later setup. Let's break it down step by step, because the timeline here tells a whole different story. Back in May 2017, Young Thug started doing business with Icebox, and by that time, he wasn't some unknown artist trying to get attention. He was already one of the biggest names in Atlanta, with serious influence and major reach, running with YSL Records, landing big features, and shaping the culture. Young Thug walking into a jewelry store wasn't just another customer moment. That was instant visibility on a massive level. Everything he wore was guaranteed to be seen by huge audiences, and Icebox knew exactly what that meant. They understood the spotlight he carried and the kind of attention that could bring straight to their brand. Across 4 different visits between May 2017 and May 2018, Young Thug walked out with multiple luxury pieces that turned heads. We're talking about a $44,000 Rolex Sky Dweller, a $20,000 Cartier bracelet, and a $10,000 diamond Cartier Love bracelet. Then there was a custom $30,000 Miami Cuban Link diamond wallet chain with a rose gold clasp that stood out on its own. Add everything together, and you're looking at over $200,000 worth of jewelry leaving the store without being fully paid up front. And that's where things start raising eyebrows, because how does a situation like that even happen? Think about it. This isn't how normal business usually works. You can't walk into a car dealership, say you'll pay later, and expect them to hand over keys to a $200,000 car just like that. It doesn't move like that in most industries. So why did Icebox handle this situation differently? That's where it starts getting real interesting, because later on, Young Thug's legal team would describe this type of arrangement as a questionable business move. And that opens up a bigger conversation about how these deals are actually set up behind the scenes. At the same time, to keep things fair, Icebox's side does suggest that Young Thug wasn't ignoring the situation from the beginning. During that same stretch of time, Young Thug reportedly made payments adding up to $95,000 toward the total. That's not a small number. That's nearly half of the reported $210,000 balance. So this wasn't a situation where nothing was being paid at all. But then things suddenly started to shift, and that's when the tension really kicked in. At some point, the payments stopped coming in, leaving a remaining balance of $115,090. According to Icebox, when they tried to reach out and follow up, they got nothing back. No reply from Thug, no response from his team, just complete silence on their end. That silence is what pushed everything into a more serious direction. Then on October 16, 2018, Icebox's attorney stepped in and sent a formal demand letter to Young Thug's last known address. That move changed everything, turning a business situation into a legal one fast. They gave him 30 days to either pay what was owed or at least come to the table and talk it out. The attorney even stated publicly, "We told him if he did not respond or at least get back to us to discuss the debt within 30 days, we would take legal action." But according to reports, there was still no response during that window. So by November 2018, not long after Young Thug was released from DeKalb County Jail connected to a prior case, Icebox took things all the way and filed a lawsuit in Fulton County Superior Court. And they didn't stop at just the remaining $115,090 balance either. They added another $250,000 in punitive damages, pushing the total up to $365,000. Then they made sure it was public, loud, and impossible to ignore. At that point, it was clear this wasn't staying behind closed doors. This was a statement move meant to get attention. But right when it looked one-sided, everything took a sharp turn.
I talked about how much the pick off, how much the hat?
The hat? Yeah. The hat was free.
Free for the hat? Okay, I see the shades. Flow buzz, okay, how much for the shades?
Shades like $5, $500.
$500, okay, I see the earrings, how much for the earrings? The earrings.
About $850.
About $850 for the earrings, okay, I see the chain, how much for the chain? About $250 for the chain, I see the shirt, how much for the shirt?
We see y'all about $1,200.
Okay, I see the bracelet, how much for the bracelet?
No, this right here about $120.
Okay, about 20.
I think this right here about 75 grand.
75 grand, okay, what about these right here?
This right here about 140.
140, okay.
This right here about 160.
160, I see the ring though, how much for the ring?
This ring right here about 1.2.
1.2?
This ring right here free, came from my birthday.
Okay, for the birthday girl, okay, I see the pin, how much the pin? Yeah.
These vertebrae, man, it's one of my cousins.
Okay, for the bag.
Young Thug didn't just sit back and accept the lawsuit. His legal team came back strong with a counterclaim that grabbed serious attention. This wasn't some basic response either. It turned into one of the more intense back-and-forth moments you'll see between an artist and a jeweler, and what they revealed added whole new layers to the situation. According to Young Thug's legal team, Icebox was moving in a way they described as a predatory business practice. Now let's break that down so it really connects. The claim wasn't just that Icebox let him take jewelry and pay later. It goes deeper than that. They argued that Icebox actually reached out over time, encouraged him to take more pieces, and even pushed the idea of leaving without paying up front. And the understanding, according to that side, was that payment details would be worked out later. So from their perspective, this wasn't casual at all. They're saying Icebox made a clear effort to put high-value jewelry in his hands with no immediate payment required. Everything was presented like it was flexible, easy, and not something to stress over right away. But then, once the balance stacked up, the whole tone allegedly changed. Suddenly, it wasn't flexible anymore. It became strict deadlines, pressure, and legal action. That switch-up is where things start raising serious questions. Because why set it up one way, then flip it when the numbers get bigger? Now think about it from a business angle. If Young Thug is moving around Atlanta for months wearing your jewelry, posting it to millions, showing up in videos and being seen at major events, that kind of visibility is powerful. That's the kind of promotion money can't always buy, and it puts the brand right in front of a massive audience every time he steps out. At his peak around 2017 and 2018, Young Thug had a massive online audience and was constantly in the spotlight. Everywhere he went, people were watching, and everything he wore got attention instantly. That kind of visibility isn't something brands can easily recreate. You can't just run a regular ad and expect it to hit the same way as a major artist naturally showing off your jewelry. So the argument from Young Thug's side was simple, but it carried weight. Icebox had already received major value from the situation. They benefited from months of high-level exposure tied to one of the biggest names in hip-hop at the time. And when you add in a $365,000 lawsuit connected to Young Thug, that creates another wave of attention on its own. That kind of spotlight puts the brand right back in the public eye in a big way. But his legal team didn't stop there. They raised another serious point that added even more attention to the situation. Even after the lawsuit was filed, Icebox was still using Young Thug's image and photos across their social media for promotion. Using someone's name and likeness like that without clear approval can bring up real legal concerns, and his team made sure that issue was front and center. That added another layer to an already heated situation. And this story doesn't just stop with Young Thug and Icebox. It points to a bigger pattern that's been part of the jewelry industry for years. Whether intentional or not, this situation put a spotlight on how these deals can play out when someone decides to push back. For anyone trying to understand the connection between jewelers and celebrities, the business side is actually very strategic. High-end jewelry stores looking to grow in the hip-hop space face a real challenge. Top artists with major influence don't need to shop at any one place, so getting their attention and keeping it becomes a whole different game. Artists at that level have endless options, and every jeweler is trying to work with names like Young Thug, Lil Baby, or Future. So to lock in those relationships, stores often come in with flexible setups. Take the jewelry now, handle the payment later, and make sure you're seen wearing it everywhere possible. It sounds smooth on the surface, but the real tension shows up when it's time to talk money.
Rob, let's not let anybody in right now, okay?
Alright.
If I ask them, they swear they know you guys.
It's a green, what is it?
Green Jaguar.
Green
We're
Jaguar.
really not open for anybody right now. Like,
They know me when they see me on TV.
Tell you.
You should know me, man. Your kids know me too. Let's keep it that way.
Because here's what doesn't always get said out loud. Situations like this can sometimes bring more attention through a loud public dispute than a quiet payment ever would. When Icebox filed that $365,000 lawsuit against Young Thug and made it public, their name started circulating everywhere. Every blog, every headline, every post kept repeating Icebox again and again. That's massive exposure without spending on ads. That kind of attention alone can carry serious value when it comes to branding. In a way, the legal drama became its own wave of promotion, putting the spotlight right back on the business in a major way. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Young Thug wasn't the first artist connected to this kind of situation, not even close. That's what makes people start questioning if there's a bigger pattern behind all of this. Take Soulja Boy, for example. Yes, that Soulja Boy who shook things up with Crank That back in 2007. He said publicly that he was one of the first rappers to shop at Icebox and even claimed he helped bring attention to the store before it became a major celebrity hotspot. And to be fair, there's some truth to that story, which makes everything around this situation stand out even more. Icebox has even acknowledged that Soulja Boy was one of their early high-profile clients. But while he was helping boost their visibility and bring attention to the brand, something else was building quietly in the background, a growing balance that couldn't be ignored. Back in October 2011, Soulja Boy made purchases totaling $45,144 at the store. Then he came back for more pieces and even had jewelry repairs done, adding another $15,726 to the tab. The total kept climbing, and at some point, the payments reportedly stopped coming in. What started as regular business quickly turned into something much bigger. By 2013, about 2 years after those purchases, Icebox filed a lawsuit in Fulton County State Court claiming more than $60,000 in unpaid balance. That's when things officially shifted from business to legal pressure. And just like that, another situation went public. Fast forward to 2021, and Soulja Boy wasn't staying quiet about any of it. He started speaking out, sharing his side of the story, and calling attention to how everything played out behind the scenes. He made it clear that, in his view, the situation wasn't as simple as it looked on paper. According to Soulja Boy, a similar setup was in play. He described being encouraged to take jewelry, build a relationship with the store, and represent the brand without everything being fully locked in up front. At first, it sounded smooth, like a win-win situation for both sides. But later on, the energy shifted. What started as a flexible arrangement suddenly turned into a serious financial dispute that played out in public. And that's where people really started connecting the dots. You've got different artists, different timelines, but very similar situations unfolding. Jewelry gets taken, visibility shoots up, the brand benefits from the spotlight, and then comes the pressure over what's still owed. Now, to keep things fair, every situation has two sides, and at the end of the day, businesses do expect to be paid for what they provide. That part never changes. But what really made people stop and look twice was how often these situations seemed to follow the same pattern, especially when big-name artists were involved. At this point, the conversation wasn't just about one artist or one disagreement anymore. It started raising bigger questions about how these deals are structured from the start, and whether artists truly understand what they're stepping into when they walk out with high-value jewelry under flexible terms. Then things took another turn. Soulja Boy jumped online with a viral tweet, proudly saying he was the first rapper to shop at Icebox. He was clearly looking for recognition, trying to remind people of his role in helping build that spotlight. But Icebox didn't respond the way he expected at all. Instead, they went straight to TMZ and made it clear that that tweet didn't hold weight to them because that 2013 legal case was still unresolved, even after all that time. And this is where the situation really escalates. That original $60,000 balance didn't stay the same. It reportedly grew to nearly $200,000 over the years with added fees and interest. A judge had already ruled in Icebox's favor, and legal steps were actively in motion to recover the money. But when attempts were made to locate funds in Soulja Boy's accounts, reports claimed there was less than $10,000 available. Think about how serious that sounds. An artist who once said he helped bring major attention to the brand ends up, years later, facing a balance close to $200,000 and reportedly doesn't have enough available funds to cover it. That's when the reality of these delayed payment setups really hits hard. This is what these kinds of arrangements can turn into when things don't go as planned. People have been talking about this dynamic for years, but most artists in that position choose to handle things quietly instead of going back and forth in court, especially when their public image is on the line. What really made Young Thug's situation stand out is that he didn't stay quiet. He challenged everything and brought that predatory practice argument straight into the spotlight. While Soulja Boy handled his situation more privately, Young Thug turned his into a full public conversation that people couldn't ignore. At the same time, the financial side still mattered. He had paid less than half of the total, and the remaining balance sat there for months without being cleared. Reports also claimed there was no response to multiple attempts to reach him. From a business perspective, a balance is still a balance, and Icebox had records, invoices, and documentation to back up their claims. But when you look at it from Young Thug's side, the whole situation starts to feel very different. If a jewelry store is willingly handing over hundreds of thousands of dollars in pieces without requiring any upfront payment, that's not a normal retail setup. That starts to look more like a marketing strategy than a standard sale. And if part of that strategy includes taking risks on high-profile clients, then switching to legal action when things don't go as planned, especially knowing the kind of attention it can bring, that's a completely different way of doing business. That's exactly why this situation got so much attention. It raised questions people don't usually say out loud. Think about it. Legal headlines alone can generate massive visibility. Something like Icebox files $365,000 lawsuit involving Young Thug spreads fast and puts the brand name everywhere. That kind of exposure can shape public perception in a major way, making the brand look closely tied to big celebrities and high-value deals, whether people agree with the approach or not. And this is where everything starts to connect on a bigger level. Because once you step back and look at the full picture, it's not just about one deal going wrong. It's about how the system itself is set up. The lines between business, promotion, and influence start to blur, and that's where things can get confusing fast. In these kinds of situations, artists aren't just customers, they're walking billboards with massive reach. Every chain, every watch, every bracelet isn't just jewelry, it's content, it's marketing, it's exposure hitting millions instantly. And when that kind of power is involved, the stakes get a lot higher than a normal transaction. From the outside, it might look simple. Take the jewelry, pay later. But behind that, there can be expectations that aren't always clearly spelled out. How much promotion is enough? How long is too long to wait for payment? And when does a business decide to switch from patience to pressure? That's where situations like this can take a sharp turn. Because once lawyers get involved, everything becomes official, documented, and public. What might have started as a flexible relationship suddenly turns into a strict legal battle, and now the whole world is watching it play out in real time. And let's be real, once it hits that stage, both sides are protecting their image just as much as their money. The artist doesn't want to look irresponsible, and the business doesn't want to look like it got taken advantage of. So now it's not just about what happened, it's about how it's being seen by the public. That's why cases like this hit so hard in the culture. They pull back the curtain on how these deals really move behind the scenes. It shows that what looks like easy access and luxury on the surface can come with serious pressure underneath. And for upcoming artists watching all of this, there's a lesson in it whether they realize it or not. Because stepping into these kinds of agreements without fully understanding the terms can turn into something way bigger than expected. What starts as an opportunity can quickly become a situation that follows you for years if things don't line up the right way. Then suddenly, in August 2019, everything flipped. Court records from Fulton County showed the entire case was dismissed just like that. No detailed explanation, no major announcement, no long breakdown, just over in a flash. That kind of ending only raises more questions than answers. At that point, there were really only a couple of possibilities. Either the remaining balance was handled privately, or both sides came to some kind of agreement behind closed doors that worked for everyone involved. Whatever actually happened, it never fully played out in public, and that mystery just adds even more tension to an already intense situation. Considering how strong both sides were coming out publicly before that, the most likely outcome points to a private resolution where neither side had to admit fault out loud. And situations like that happen more often than people realize, especially when big names and big money are involved. But even though the case was officially closed, the conversation didn't go anywhere. Young Thug's legal team had already introduced the idea of what they called a predatory business practice, along with claims that Icebox used his image for promotion without clear permission. Even if those claims never fully played out in court, they still put serious questions on record that the industry couldn't just ignore. And that's what makes this situation bigger than just one moment. At its core, this isn't only about a rapper and a jewelry bill. It's about the relationship between the hip-hop world and the businesses that move alongside it, benefiting from the culture, the visibility, and the influence that comes with it. And when you really zoom out, this situation starts to say a lot about how the culture and business are connected in ways people don't always notice. Because it's not just about jewelry, it's about influence, image, and who really benefits the most when those two collide. In the hip-hop world, image is everything. What you wear, where you shop, what you show off, it all plays into how people see you. And high-end jewelry has always been a huge part of that. It represents success, power, and status, and fans pay attention to every detail. So when an artist steps out wearing certain pieces, it's not just fashion, it's a signal. But at the same time, that signal is also promotion, whether it's intended or not. Every post, every appearance, every video becomes free advertising for whatever brand is attached to those pieces. And when millions of people are watching, that kind of exposure can be worth more than any traditional marketing campaign. That's where the balance starts to get tricky, because now you've got two sides benefiting in completely different ways. The artist gets the look and the image, while the business gets the visibility and attention. But when it's time to put a clear value on both sides, that's when disagreements can start to build. And if those expectations were never fully locked in from the beginning, things can go left quickly. What one side sees as promotion, the other might not count the same way. What feels like a flexible agreement at first can later turn into strict numbers and deadlines. That's why situations like this don't just disappear after one case ends. They stick around in conversations, in business decisions, and in how future deals get handled. Artists start asking more questions, teams get more involved, and businesses adjust how they structure these kinds of arrangements. Because at the end of the day, nobody wants to end up in a situation where a deal that looked good at the start turns into a public legal battle later on. And stories like this become a reminder that in an industry built on image and influence, the fine print matters just as much as the spotlight. That connection runs deeper than most people realize, and moments like this put it right in the spotlight. Because the real conversation isn't just about whether Young Thug owed money. His own team acknowledged there was a balance. The bigger question is why a business model even exists where artists can walk out with high-value jewelry and settle payments later. When you really break that down, it reveals a lot more about how money, influence, and branding move within the culture than any post online ever could. And once you start paying attention, it becomes clear this isn't just a one-time situation or tied to one artist. It's part of a much bigger system that's been operating quietly in the background for years. The mix of image, influence, and business deals creates an environment where things can get blurry fast. For artists stepping into that space, it can feel like a major opportunity at first. You walk into a high-end store, get offered top-tier pieces, flexible terms, and an instant upgrade to your image. It looks like a win all around. But what doesn't always get explained clearly is how quickly those deals can turn into serious obligations. That's where the pressure starts to build. And from the business side, every move is calculated. Every chain worn in public, every tagged post, every appearance in a video adds value to the brand behind it. That visibility stacks up over time, turning artists into walking billboards without it ever feeling like a formal agreement. And this is where the reality of it all really starts to settle in, because once you understand how these deals are structured, it becomes clear that nothing about this is sluchai or random. Every move, every piece, every post, it all plays a role in a much bigger game being run behind the scenes. For artists, especially those rising fast, these opportunities can feel like a major level up. You're being offered expensive jewelry, treated like a VIP, and put in positions that instantly boost your image. It feels like you've made it, like you're stepping into a new level of success overnight. But at the same time, there's a business side moving quietly underneath all of that excitement. Because while the spotlight is on the artist, the brand is building right alongside him. Every time those pieces get seen, talked about, or posted, the store gains more recognition, more credibility, and more demand. And the bigger the artist, the bigger that return becomes. But here's where it can get complicated. If the structure of the deal isn't fully clear from the beginning, expectations can end up completely different on both sides. One side might see it as a flexible partnership built on exposure, while the other sees it as a straightforward transaction that needs to be paid in full.
That gap in understanding is where problems start, because once time passes and balances grow, the tone can shift fast. What once felt like easygoing business can suddenly turn into deadlines, pressure, and legal action. And by that point, it's no longer just business, it's public. Headlines, blogs, and social media all pick it up. And now the situation is being judged by millions of people who don't know the full story. That kind of attention can shape reputations on both sides in a major way. That's why situations like this leave a lasting impact. They don't just end when the case closes, they change how future deals are approached. Artists become more cautious, teams get more involved, and businesses tighten how they handle these arrangements. Because in a space where image, money, and influence are all connected, one misunderstanding can turn into something much bigger than expected. And once it's out in the public, there's no control in how far it spreads. And by the time you reach this point, one thing becomes clear. This isn't just about one artist or one store. It's about how the entire system moves, the way influence gets traded, the way visibility turns into value, and how fast a situation can shift when money enters the picture. Because in this space, attention is a form of currency. The more eyes you bring, the more valuable you become, not just as an artist, but as a marketing force. And businesses understand that at a high level. That's why getting their pieces on the right person can be just as powerful as any paid campaign. But here's the part that doesn't always get highlighted. When attention is treated like currency, it still doesn't always translate evenly when it's time to settle actual numbers. One side might feel like they've already delivered huge value through exposure, while the other is focused strictly on the financial balance. And that difference in perspective can create serious tension, because now you've got two completely different ways of measuring what the deal was worth. One is looking at millions of views, influence, and cultural impact, while the other is looking at invoices, totals, and deadlines. Once that gap opens up, it's only a matter of time before things escalate. And when they do, it doesn't stay private for long, especially when big names are involved. The story spreads, opinions form, and suddenly it becomes bigger than the original deal itself. That's why this situation continues to get talked about, not just because of who was involved, but because it exposed how easily business and influence can clash when expectations aren't fully aligned from the start. And for anyone watching from the outside, trying to step into that same world, this becomes more than just a story. It becomes a warning, because what looks like opportunity on the surface can carry real weight behind it.
In an industry where everything moves fast and image plays a huge role, understanding the business side isn't optional, it's necessary. Because once you step into that spotlight, every move counts and every decision can follow you a lot further than expected if things don't go the right way. That's why situations like this hit completely different when they go public. It pulls the curtain all the way back and shows how these relationships really operate behind the scenes. This isn't always just simple buying and selling. There's strategy, timing, and sometimes real pressure built into the process. Young Thug had the platform and the legal backing to actually push back and bring attention to how all of this works. And that's not something you see happen often. Most artists don't have that kind of reach or support when they get into situations like this. A lot of times, people choose to handle it quietly and move on, because going public can cost more in image than it saves financially. But the fact that he put everything on record, called out the practices, and explained how these setups can play out, that's what made this situation stand out in a major way. It forced Icebox to respond and defend how they do business, and that kind of spotlight doesn't happen every day. And that's the part that really sticks with people, because for any artist who's ever been told, take it now, we'll figure out payment later, this story is gonna hit a lot different now. Now I want to hear what you think. Did Young Thug handle this the right way by pushing back, Or do you think the responsibility still falls on him to clear the balance no matter what? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's really talk about it. And if you want more breakdowns like this, exposing how the industry really moves behind the scenes, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video so more people can see it. Don't forget to comment too, because the conversation is just as important as the story. Tap into the next video on screen, because this situation is just one example of how things can play out when you don't fully understand the game. And there's a lot more where this came from.